Hello, and welcome to the first in a 10-part video series on refugee movement. In this series, we will be comparing the movement of Syrian refugees today to German refugees post-World War II. This series will look at the differences in circumstance, treatment, movement patterns, relocation, adaptation, and outcomes. Today we will cover a brief overview of the different circumstances between the two migrations, and the different treatment of the peoples involved in them. The outtakes will be the author's views on the issues and look to draw some similarities between the two. Difference in circumstance. There are some differences in circumstances between these two events. Post-World War II, the vanquished Germany and its people were occupied by the Allied powers, and subsequently the nation was divided. The peoples of Germany were then thrown out of other countries in which they were living, even if they had nothing to do with the war. In some countries, the moment the war broke out, plans began to get laid to expel the German people for fears that nationalism may take root. Because of this, the only solution in these nations' eyes was to kick the German people of Volksdeutsche. Volksdeutsche is a term used to refer to people with a German background. At the Potsdam Conference, the Allied powers came together and worked out plans for forced migration of Volksdeutsche. The number of people to be displaced by this numbered in the millions. In the end, the plan was unrealistic, but it was to be carried out regardless. The difference in the Syrian situation is that part of the migration is voluntary. Some people were displaced because of attacks within and outside their countries. Iraqis were displaced because of attacks of their own regime under Saddam Hussein. Another major issue, and more recent, is the outbreak of the Syrian civil war. Since 2011, the fighting between Islamic State forces, the regime, and external forces has created massive unrest and disorder in the country. While the displacement from attacks is not voluntary, the compulsion of people to leave before attacks occur has also been a phenomenon seen in the conflict. Neighboring countries such as Jordan and Lebanon have been huge receivers of the refugee population. Because of their pivotal role, they will be covered in more detail in a later video. Treatment and treatment problems. The treatment of German refugees was atrocious in every respect of the word. They were forced to move at bayonet point, brought out of their homes, and herded into overcrowded cattle cars. The cleansing knew no mercy. Men, women, and children were all forcibly moved. Some did not wait to be expelled and ran before they were forcibly moved. The Allied powers acknowledged that this would be an enormous humanitarian crisis even before the operation had begun. The German refugees were subject to exceptionally poor treatment prior and during the operation. There was sexual violence on a massive scale, and the predominantly female population of refugees typically reached Germany in miserable physical condition. Some did not even manage to survive the ordeal. Even some of the Allies themselves noted how horrific the treatment of the people was, noting the wagons of bodies being carried away from the cattle cars. As for the Syrian refugees, their current state is relatively messy as well. The neighbor countries to Syria, such as Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, have taken in a majority of the refugees. Many of these people have no legal protections and can easily be exploited. One of the more alarming issues is the fact that the EU sought a way to keep people out of the EU, closing the Balkans in 2016. The EU also sought to expel the people of Syria, clearing the way for unlawful returns to Turkey, declaring it a safe third country. Similarities. Both of these events have been, or are, ongoing humanitarian crises, and have truly made a mark on the world. The expulsion, and to a degree, slaughter of millions of people just from movement from their countries is an atrocity. The abandonment of peoples who are innocent by all measure other than simply their ethnic background is racism at its finest. These events have unfortunately brought the worst of humanity in both of their occurrences. The question is, how can humanity fix this? How can humanity address their wrongs and attitudes? Can they? Would it be possible for one day humanity to stop these crises and maybe even bring peace to this world we all call home?